Let's now turn the time over to our expert on inclusive practice, Ms. Shelby Hiadan. She will be diving deeper on inclusive practice and providing tips on how you can identify and handle challenging behaviors in the classroom. Over to you, Shelby.
Thank you, Kenneth. Hi again, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. I will be sharing about inclusion, inclusive education, and how you can be more inclusive in the classroom. Before anything else, let us first establish what inclusion is. I am going to give you a layman's definition. Luckily, I found one from the Cambridge Dictionary. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, inclusion is the act of including someone or something as part of a group. Like all of us here, we are included in this Naptime webinar. Now, there is an additional explanation about inclusion whereby everyone should be able to use the same facilities, take part in the same activities, and enjoy the same experiences, including people who have a disability or a disadvantage. Let us again use this Naptime webinar group as an example. If we have someone here who has a hearing impairment, that person can still have the same experience as all of you with the provision of captions. By providing captions, that person with hearing impairment is included. We include that person. I have also added here the meaning of inclusive education in our context of education and all of us here being educators. Inclusive education means that every child has the right to quality education and learning. A simple definition, right? It also simply means that all children should have a fair chance to go to school to learn and develop skills. And inclusive education is the most effective way to make sure this happens. So, I've talked about inclusive education, and now let's move to the classroom. Let's look at some of the challenges. How many of you encounter these common challenges? You can raise your hand. Okay, let's see who do we have any who has encountered any of these common challenges in the classroom? I'm sure most of you or almost all of you have encountered these challenges. First up, you may have children who have difficulty focusing or paying attention. They do not complete their work. They may move around the class, have trouble sitting down, or even disturb their friends. Next, you have children who have difficulty following instructions. They may need additional or repeated reminders to follow instructions. You may also have children who may need additional help in understanding concepts that you teach. Sometimes they need extra materials or explanations in order for them to understand what you are teaching. Keep in mind these challenges, and later we will learn about some activities and tips that you can use to help these children. The topic of inclusion is not only happening in other countries. Singapore has also started to make the move towards inclusion. I will share with you two initiatives. One of the things that is happening is that we have preschools in the inclusive support program. This is the 7 pilot preschools aimed to provide a better and more inclusive learning experience for both typically developing children and children with developmental needs. Some of you here may be working in one of these preschools. The second initiative is the appointment of an ICO. ICO. Has any one of you here heard of this acronym ICO? Anybody knows what it stands for? You can type your answers on the chat. And let's see what answers we have. ICO. Okay, most of us haven't heard. I saw one answer there, inclusion coordinator. And that is right. ICO stands for Inclusion Coordinator. So there will be the appointment of an inclusion coordinator in every preschool to identify and support children with developmental needs. All of these reflect a move towards a greater guard for children with developmental needs in the classroom. All right, with some of the information about inclusion that I shared just now, I hope it gave you some idea or jogged your memory a bit. Let us now do a quick poll about inclusion. This poll is about being inclusive in your classroom. All you need to do is pick a statement that best describes your current inclusion state. So it's poll time. We will give you a bit of time to complete the poll. So let's wait for a bit. So keep those votes coming in. Okay, the poll has popped up, so keep those votes coming in and let's see what the results will be later. Okay, let's see what the poll results are. Let's wait for a couple more seconds and let's see what the results will be. All right, we have the poll results. And it seems that most of you here on this webinar wants to start being inclusive. So thank you for all your responses. So this means this webinar will be very useful for you because I will be sharing with you tips on how you can be inclusive in your classroom. So whether you are already being inclusive, just getting started, or need more information about inclusion, the next couple of slides contain information that can be useful for you. Some of us think that being inclusive can be difficult. But I tell you, some of these things that we think about are not true. They are actually myths. Let us bust those myths that may be stopping you from being inclusive in your classroom. We have three statements to talk about, and here is statement one. It says here that inclusive education is a one-size-fits-all approach. What do you all think? Is this a myth or a fact? You can type your answers on the chat and let us see what you all think of this statement. All right, I see most of you answered that this statement is a myth. Wow, all responses are a myth, and you are all right. This statement is a myth, totally not true. Inclusive education is not a one size fits all approach. As a matter of fact, inclusive education, we can adjust the curriculum and the way we teach to cater to the learning needs of the children. What can these approaches be? Let me give you two examples. The first one is visual cues. For example, you have a child in your class who has difficulty paying attention. I mentioned this earlier as one of the challenges that you may have. You can help this child pay attention or being more focused in the class by presenting a visual cue. So here in the slides, we see visual cues of cleanup and raise hands. If we are talking about cleanup, you can show the visual cue of cleanup together with your verbal instructions. It's time to clean up. And you know what? This visual cue can be helpful nowadays, now that we are all wearing masks in the center. When wearing masks, it can be difficult for children to understand your instructions. But with a visual cue, it's easier for the children to understand your instructions. There are also other ways for you to indicate that it's cleanup time aside from a visual cue. Here we have a visual timer. You can use a visual timer to let the children know how much time they have left to do their cleaning up. You can also have cleanup songs, okay, to show the children or indicate to them that it's time to clean up. So that would be the second one. And lastly, we have the sign for cleanup. Clean up. So you can demonstrate it to the children while saying it's time to clean up. This is a second example. So you may have a child in class who moves a lot. So this child may stand up, move around, and may have trouble paying attention. This child seems to have a lot of energy that needs to be used up. So how can we include this child back in the activity? A quick and easy movement break can help. And remember, this movement break does not have to be for that child only. You can include the whole class. Here's one way to do your movement breaks, and I have here this cube. Okay? On this cube, you can put pictures of actions that the children can do for their movement break. Examples of movements can include an arm shake, a shoulder movement, or a head rotation. Now, with this cue, we can have the children take turns throwing it and perform the action that comes up. Why don't we have a movement break now so we can try and use this cue? I am going to throw it and let's see what action comes up. Okay? Aha! This is the action that came out. Okay? So this action means we are gonna rotate our shoulders 5 times. All right, let's do that. Okay, we're gonna rotate our shoulders 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so you see, with that quick movement break, we got to expend our excess energy. It also helps us refocus. So this movement break can also help the child in your class to refocus as well. Let's move on to the second statement. It says here, inclusion benefits all children, both with and without disabilities. What do you all think this time? Myth or fact? Okay, I see the responses coming in. Mostly facts. The answers is mostly fact. Majority says it's a fact. It is indeed a fact. Inclusion does benefit all children. And when we say all children, we refer to both with and without disabilities. This statement emphasizes on values, children learning about diversity and compassion. We will now share a short video clip on how children display compassion towards their peers.
Sometimes Rain always push me and and cry. Like this. Push. But it's okay.
Why?
She's still learning. And I still love Warren. I need a new paper. Okay, I'll get one paper for you.
She's able to understand, that moment. Sometimes, as teachers, we might overlook.
If you do it again, I will throw away a paper. Don't scold Rin. Rin is still learning. I'm not scolding.
And I believe that that opens up so much possibilities. That sometimes it's not about head knowledge, but it's about the heart.
In that short video clip, we saw Lorraine knows that her classmate Rin needs extra help and understanding. Lorraine understood it herself without teacher Daniel having to explain about it. The understanding and compassion that Lorraine displayed towards Rin is something that cannot be taught with an activity sheet. It was the experience of being in an inclusive classroom that enabled Rin to have that understanding. Being together in an inclusive classroom can create opportunities for peer modeling. Typically, developing children can take the lead and be the models for their classmates with developmental needs. With a cleanup activity, you can have the children who are typical to be the leaders in the cleanup time, to be models for their classmates who, example, may have difficulty following instructions. So let them lead. And with this tip of letting the children lead, it can have a bonus. You know what? You do not have to be the one who is always giving instructions and prompting all the time. The children can do that for you. Now let us move on to the third and last statement. The statement goes like this: teachers need special skills to teach children with developmental needs or disability. So this time, let's see, is this a myth or a fact? Again, let's put down our answers on the chat now. Okay, I see, wow, mostly myth. There's some that says both. Uh-huh. Majority says that this statement is a myth. Okay, and you are right. That statement is a myth. Believe it or not, you already have the skills to teach children with developmental needs in the classroom. You have the core skills to support these children. You have been teaching managing behavior, and with those skills that you use to teach and manage behavior, you can use those same skills to be inclusive in the classroom. Let us look at some examples. You may have this poster or something similar to this in your classroom. You can use this poster to teach children who may have difficulties in following and understanding instructions. You can teach the task of washing hands as a series of simple steps so that the children can follow and understand. There is no need to create a new poster or have a special strategy. Use this poster that is already available. Now, let's look at arts and craft. Arts and craft is one of the activities that you have in your class, and sometimes it does require cutting and pasting. For children who have difficulties doing and completing tasks, you can create something like this. Okay? This is a sequence card, and it shows the steps that the child needs to do. So here we have cut, paste, and color. 3 steps only. You can give this to the child who needs help in completing tasks, or even a child who has difficulty following instructions. So this strip is for one child, while the whole class has the general steps, which are the 4 steps that you see on the slides now. You simply adjusted the number of steps of the activity to ensure the child is still included in the arts and craft activity of the class. By the way, you can get these pictures from this website called do2learn.com, and it has many resources that you can find helpful for your class. Now, we have uncovered the facts behind the myths and we have learned some tips. Let's look at this acronym. This acronym is ART. Nowadays, I know we are very familiar with this acronym, well, because of COVID. It is something important that we must do. My acronym here that we have is also equally important. It's adjust, reach out, and teach. First, you can A, adjust your teaching to the learning needs and styles of your children. You can use visual cues, you can do movement breaks. You saw from the short video clip that children can show compassion towards their peers with developmental needs. If these children can or reach out, you can do that too. And lastly, we as teachers, we teach. We already have the core skills to make our classrooms more inclusive. With this ART, use it as we embark on our inclusive education journey. Thank you, everyone. I now pass the time back to Kenneth.
Thank you, Shelby. I believe your sharing highlighted the importance of embracing diversity and reminded all educators here that every child is unique and that children should have equal opportunities to succeed. It'll be great if you can stay on for the Q&A. Now, if you have any other questions for Shelby, do remember to put them in the Q&A box. I understand that you have put some in the chat box. Yeah, just shift them onto the Q&A box. Right. So before we move on to Q&A, we have prepared a little present for you. This template of movement cube for you to use with your children, and we have also included a checklist which you can use as a daily reminder. To get a handout, all you need to do is to scan the Q&A code on the screen, or you can click on the link in the chat box. Not only will we be sending you the handout via email, we have also worked with the National Library Board to curate a list of books you can read up to know more about inclusive practice. This list will also be uploaded onto our website after this session. So do remember to share these resources with your colleagues and encourage them to join our session for more easy tips and best practices. Now I've seen questions coming in during the sharing session, and I'm excited to bring you to our next segment, the Q&A. For this segment, other than Mrs. Luke and Shelby, we would also like to invite Ms. Claire Chan, lecturer from NICTP with vast knowledge on inclusive practice. Our panelists have all been listening attentively, and I believe they're excited to share their views as well. Let's welcome our panelists.
Hi, everyone. Hi, thanks,
Hello
Shelby,
again.
for the rich sharing.
Hi, Mrs. Lok. Most welcome,
Okay.
everyone.
Okay, earlier on, we had organized a social media contest where we asked you to send in questions on inclusive practice. We were heartened to see the increasing interest in this topic. While we would love to answer all the questions we've received, but due to time constraint, we won't be able to. Hence, we've chosen the three most interesting ones to share with you today. And to the three participants whose Instagram handle is listed on the screen, congratulations! We will be sending you a $20 CapitaLand voucher after this session. Alright, we head on to our Q&A. First question for you, Ms. Shelby. How do we practice inclusion and also do not burn out the teachers at the same time?
Thank you, Kenneth, for your question. So as you can see, the tips and some of the strategies I shared with you this afternoon are easy to implement in the classroom. So we want you to be able to implement in the classroom so as not to add on to your already many things that you need to do in your workload. At the same time, I'm hoping that as teachers, we all try and listen to what we can do and not do at the same time. You can make simple adjustments in your class and ensuring that the goals are met and the children are learning their skills. So, same materials for everyone. If you can make adjustments for a child who may need it, then go for it. If on other days you can add on to that and do some extra instructions and additional materials, you can do that too. How about you, Claire? What do you think of other suggestions?
I think that's a very good point, Shelby. And it's also important for teachers, to take some time off to really just take a break when things get too overwhelming, and always know that you're not alone in this. Thank you.
Yeah. So actually, Shelby and Claire, I was just reflecting as Shelby was sharing with us that really, I think being a preschool teacher, there are lots of pull and push and the stress, and especially during COVID times as well. So we totally understand. And you remember that some of you who joined us at earlier session, we talked about your well-being. It's really quite important. But I thought just to add on to the views here is actually when we talk about inclusion as shared by Shelby, it is really based on the fact that you believe every child can learn. And it is really about how you understand the needs of the child. And really, we also need to recognize that there are some children who really would need specialized help. And that's the part where it is also as EC professionals to stay connected to what are the available resources out there to bring in to support the child. So really, it is also a shout out to all of us here. Remember to take care of yourself. But being inclusive should be also part and parcel of the work of a preschool teacher in enabling that kind of classroom where children can see you embracing all of them. And I think that goes a long way in building an inclusive society. What do you think, Shelby and Claire?
Yes, definitely. I think that's really a very important step to take. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Look, for sharing that. And again, we want to include all the children and not only focus on children with developmental needs, because inclusion is for everyone, all the children in your classroom.
Thank you.
So over to Kenneth, yeah.
Thank you all. Okay, our second question is for Claire. How do educators teach preschoolers about inclusion?
Thank you very much, Kenneth. I think that's a very good question for a start. And, to the teacher who asked this question, I really want to assure you and thank you for bringing this up and taking the first step to want to know how to include children in the classroom, all of them, children with various needs. So what we usually do to teach inclusion would be to use social stories to teach, how turn taking is. What do you do when, what can the child do when they are feeling angry? And then from my experience, I printed out examples like this. So these are scenario cards. I'm not sure if you can see on screen. Yeah, so scenario cards like these, for example, what do you do when you want to ask others to play? So it gets the children to see the scenario, and then they will choose, in this scenario, it says ask others to play instead of snatching the toy. So is it being a good friend or not? Then the children will decide whether this scenario is being a good friend or not. And moving forward, these are all the other examples of scenario cards. Now, to make it even more real for the students, for the children, what I usually do would be to provide role play scenarios as well, getting children in a real life setting. And what I do would be the use of social play. So what you see right here are just toys that I got from Daiso. So these are just normal toys, and I get a few children to play at the same time because I want them to learn about interaction, taking turns and waiting for their turn. That's very important. So that's all about inclusion, because inclusion is about waiting, understanding each other, and also empathizing with one another. So for example, such scenarios of social play would definitely enable the children to learn more about not just themselves, like what should they do when they get angry, but also empathize with the other children when they get upset. When, like you saw the video that Shelby shared earlier on, when the girl said a certain thing, like she needed something, the friend was able to empathize and understand what that the child needed, and then proceed to help her. So this is the kind of scenario we want when it comes to inclusion in the classroom, and it's all about the little steps. So step by step, it's not an overnight thing. It's a lot of consistency, a lot of practice, a lot of a trial and error, I would say, because sometimes in the classroom, it's important that you understand the profile of the children as well and their level of understanding so that you can prepare materials that are suitable for them. Thank you.
So if I may add to Claire, as Claire was sharing, I think there's a lot to be said about the fact that when we teach children, depending on which stage they are, it's good for some explicit teaching. But at that age, I think in all situations, there's always to be said about being caught. So I feel that there's also in the everyday easy classroom, there are also opportunities like teachable moments, seeing the children interact with each other, affirming the children, and also the teachers ourselves actually being able to embrace the uniqueness of each child. So I think that in its own way are the way to also enhance the teaching and learning process for children going forward. What do you think, Claire? So to supplement what you said, I thought it is really about both. It is really about the explicit teaching and also the role modeling every day and catching teachable moments.
Yes, it's true. And sometimes, we will tend to fall into the category of incidental teaching when, you don't plan for it to happen, but it just happened. And it's okay, just go along with it and teach the children about empathy, about caring for one another at that time, even though it's not a planned lesson. And that's fine as well. As long as, most importantly, we are consistent with how we model ourselves in terms of how we facilitate the children, because the children see what we are doing, and therefore they would want to be, following the right things as well. Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
remember the video clip that was shown to us, Shelby? Actually, it is also
Ah.
quite powerful. The teacher also giving the space to children and observing that actually the children themselves are helping each other. And that in itself is the beauty of the peer interaction about inclusion. Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning this, Mrs. Lok. So these children can actually have their own ideas and can form their own understanding towards children. So we as teachers, it would be very good if we are there with them, observing and taking notes, so we know when we can scaffold and support them in their understanding of their classmates and peers. Thank you.
Over to you, Kenneth. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now on to our third question. The school is not giving the best aids for the children with additional needs. What can the teacher do? Maybe you can help, Shelby?
Okay, I would like to think for this question that the school is not yet, not yet giving the best aids for the children with additional needs, whether it's support itself or materials. So we as teachers, if we are aware of this, and I'm sure you're all very aware that sometimes the situation can be like this, let us do our part to ensure that all children, again, typically developing and children with developmental needs, receive the support that they need in the class. Okay, so sometimes when we have all these strategies, we have our colleagues, we have our co-teachers that we can share our ideas with, and so this idea can go around in your school, and hopefully with everyone or most of the teachers practicing this, supporting the children in your school, then they can recognize, and whether they're going to buy you additional needs or offering a bit of support in your inclusive practices, then that can be a start to making your school to give better aid, if I may say that. Claire, anything to add?
Yes, thank you very much for the sharing, Shelby. You had really made very good points right there. So to further add on, when it comes to making things to include children in the classroom, it doesn't have to be expensive for one. As a teacher, sharing my experience, the things I made were rather looking out for objects that would suit the abilities of the children in my class. So take this, for example, this is I'm not sure. Okay, this is sand. Right now you see it's kinetic sand, but inside the kinetic sand are little trinkets, that I want the children to find. Now, the purpose of this activity was to help one of my students who had some areas in terms of the fine motor skills development, but aside from my focus child, I used it for the other children and I placed it at the learning corner. So this is an example of how we can just use one material, but it can be used for the other children in the classroom. And that's what inclusion is all about. Now, moving on, Shelby shared earlier on about using visuals. Now, that's also for children who, are more towards, not able to read yet. However, children who are able to read, you can use portable checklists like this, and I got it only about $2. Yeah, so you can just write down what the tasks you expect the child to do for that day or for that session, what the flow is going to be like, because all this creates a predictability for the child and thus making the child feel less anxious. So when children are aware and very clear of what they're expected to do, you will realize that the behavior will lessen. Thank you.
Yeah. So I was listening to Shelby and Claire. Actually, a reflection is also about what is also within our sphere of influence as a teacher. I don't fully understand the context of the question in terms of the school, because sometimes it's what are the contributing factors. But I take it that from Shelby and Claire sharing, there are quite a number of things as a teacher we could possibly do to still create that right environment and support for all children. In fact, I recall what Shelby shared with us is that a lot of the practical tips that she shared, if we were to weave it into the classroom, it looks that it will benefit all children. So I guess if we have got that that thinking that whatever you do actually is to allow children to assess what you are nurturing them on, and actually what you're trying to get them to understand. I think it will go a long way, not just to focus on children with developmental needs, but children as a whole. Yeah, so I appreciate the thought that really it is about don't feel that you're alone. Even if you feel your school is not giving the best aids, I think the conversation must be pursued, right? And perhaps you also can talk to your fellow colleagues and also engage the school leader, the preschool leader, because it is also the fact that being inclusive, actually it is the way to go, is a mirror of what we want as a society. So I hope being able to open up conversations at the preschool could also be a way to address the challenge that I think our fellow participant is finding her in. Yeah.
Thank
So
you,
over to you, Kenneth. Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Look, Shelby, and Claire for the amazing insights. As you all know, inclusive practice is a broad topic, hence, we would like to answer as many questions as we can from our audience today. So the first question is for you, Shelby. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a two-part question. So how can the job scope of learning support educators who are equipped with screening children and intervention knowledge better support preschool teachers? Can learning support educators support ICO instead to better target more schools and support more teachers? Also, is there a platform that preschool teachers can access locally to ask for help, sharing of resources, chats, and tips to manage behaviors that is accessible to all preschool teachers island-wide?
All right. Thank you for that very extensive question. So you did mention a couple of things about how LSEDs or learning support educators can support preschool teachers in the classroom. So usually it would be good if we can share ideas, share tips on how preschool teachers can apply the strategies that these LSEDs use for their sessions. So I know we might be thinking that, oh, but learning support educators, they usually do small group only or one-to-one. So the thing is, when we do share, we take into consideration as well that, how can we apply this in the classroom? What can I change? Because it's a good strategy, and I want it to apply to a bigger group. That can be possible. For example, if we are doing usually for LSED sessions, we have games. Okay, we have language games. That is something I have observed and seen. So we can tweak the games, okay? Make it something that can accommodate several children in your class. If you have an exchange of playing cards for board games or some simple memory game, of course, for a class, we would have to have more cards so that the children can have a turn in identifying pictures, okay? So from a small group, you can add on some resources so at least all the children can participate. So that can work. For some of us who may be LSEDs here, I also want to also like ask you all that, okay, we can freely share the strategies. We also want to keep in mind that, okay, I'm going to share strategies that my colleague would be able to apply in the classroom. That is the aim, because not all strategies may be applicable. So we do want to share those that we know our colleagues in the classroom can apply it. Okay. The second question was about resources. So far, what I know is that AWA, they have this inclusive website. Okay, inclusive resources. There is currently no sharing of resources at the moment, but I do know that they release monthly reminders, newsletters, and they share with the community on what inclusive practices they have at the moment. So this is by AWA. Okay, Claire, Mrs. Look, anything to add?
Yes, thank you very much, Shelby, for touching on ICO and the learning support educator. And you made a very good point, because as you know, a former learning support educator myself, I've gone through the screening processes of the children, done small group teaching, and I must say that the amount of interaction would not be as extensive as when an ICO goes on the ground with the children every day because she's based at the center. So it's really important for the learning support educator to work with the ICO to figure out what's best in terms of intervention strategies that can be generalized. Now, generalized means like what the teacher, the learning support educator teaches the child in small group or one-to-one. It's very much fixated, but how do you bring that skill into the actual classroom would be called generalized, and that's the importance of having the ICO in the class. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the question. Thank you for the question. Really, I think it is also about how do we harness the expertise and the resources that is already available in the system to support each other. NIEC, we do conduct the post-diploma to train the early learning support personnel. So Shelby, I think that's also the part about if it is possible to network so you can always drop us a note if you would like to network, and then we can always kind of like bring like-minded people together to see as learning support personnel, with educators, whether you could actually be able to in a way contribute towards the larger sector beyond your organization to see whether you can share tips. But we also take the point that really a lot of the situation is specific to context, because what works for one child do not necessarily work for another. But it is really good to share ideas, and actually that also in a way will also reduce what you call the stress, because you're not holding it together and you know you can support each other. So I think I would like to offer, if anybody here who are the learning support educators would like to put up their hand and say, hey, I'd like to share your expertise, just connect with us, right? And we'll see how we can get it going. Right, Shelby, you're handling our post-diploma in that area, yeah?
Yes, I am.
Yes,
And I can be of help. So let us know.
Yes, let us know how we can network with you.
Okay, our second question for Miss Claire. If a class has 3 or 4 really active children and one with slight autism, how can teacher use the movement breaks to get them back in attention? And from experience, each movement breaks that she tried to help them with will take up to 10 to 15 minutes at least. So this will definitely eat into lesson time. Are there any ways to help children get back in attention?
That's a very good question. Thank you for bringing that up. So movement breaks are one example, one strategy to help children, just take a break from what's happening in the curriculum, and then after that get back to it, and be at the same at a leveled energy, that so that they'll be ready for the lesson. Now, other ways the children can be involved is for the teacher to maybe provide shorter movement breaks. Movement breaks don't have to be a session on its own, like an activity. Movement breaks can be maybe doing something different. Movement breaks can be, for example, everyone just stand up and go to the toilet, or like what Shelby has done, her dice. Those don't take that much of a time as well. Now, what I usually do aside from movement breaks is to sing. Singing helps because children love to sing and children love dancing at the same time. So these are really good examples because they don't take that much of a time, and it's only about 1 minute or so. And after the movement breaks, that's when the teacher needs to use other strategies to gather the children back through the use of, like what Shelby has shared, visuals. Visuals are important. Visuals, and again, the environment of the classroom plays a part as well. For example, on the floor, are there markings to indicate where the children should be sitting? Are there rules on the board? Visual cues like the 5 whole body listening to indicate how the children should behave when they are seated on the floor. So all these in the class environment plays a part as well, aside from movement breaks. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Claire, so much for sharing. I think that's all the time we have for today Q&A section. So, Mrs. Luke, would you like to round out the segment?
Yeah, thank you, Kenneth. Thank you. So thank you once again to Shelby for your sharing and insights about inclusion and inclusive practices. You have validated and assured us that much of what we do in the early childhood space are indeed inclusive practices, and that the core knowledge and skills we have as EC professionals stand us in good stead to support all children, including those with developmental needs, and also knowing where to get the specialized help if children needs them. So Shelby and Claire have timely reminded us that it takes a village to raise a child, and that EC educator must seek to understand the whole ecosystem and people within which the child nestles in and build relationships with important stakeholders. You are not alone. Important stakeholders like parents, community partners, therapists, specialists in nurturing and supporting children, particularly those with developmental needs that require higher support. Now remember, once again, I keep on stressing that you are not alone. We are not alone. And that the tide of inclusion is turning in the right direction for Singapore, with many more like-minded professionals wanting to do the right thing. So as EC educators, we talked about it, we role model positive behaviors in the way we interact with colleagues and with children. So really on a daily basis, in embracing all children, we are indeed demonstrating to children themselves that this is the way an inclusive society works, and they will pick up similar values and attitudes. They will embrace each other as unique and valuable members of society. Your influence will go a long, long way in shaping the contours of the inclusive society we value going forward. It now leaves me to thank you on behalf of NIEC for being here. Remember Shelby's version of the ART, adjust, reach out and teach, and weave them into your daily practice. Now may you go away with new ideas and renewed energy to engage the little ones when they awake from their nap time. Take care and keep well. Over to you now, Kenneth.
Thank you once again, Mrs. Loke, Shelby, and Claire for the insightful sharing and encouragement.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. We hope that this was an enjoyable and useful session for all of you, and that you'll be able to put what you have learned from the sharing into practice. You will also be glad to know that we offer many courses, such as those listed on the screen, that will allow you to gain deeper insight into inclusive practice. So, if you'd like to enhance your capabilities to support young children with developmental needs and equip yourself with the skills to address challenging behaviors in the classroom, head on over to our NIEC website at www.niec.edu.sg for more information on our certificates, post-diploma, and CBD courses web pages. Otherwise, you can scan the QR code or click on the link provided in the chat box. You'll be glad to know that we have upcoming intakes in April and September for some of these courses, so do check them out. And if you need a reminder on our sharing today, we will be posting it up on our social media soon, so look out for that. In the meantime, you can go on to our Facebook and Instagram page for many other easy tips. Again, thank you so much for sharing your precious afternoon with us. We hope you have benefited from today's session and that the tips that our speakers provided will be useful as a stepping stone entering the new year.